Welcome into this special edition of FYI. Our guest for the half of an hour, Dr. Deborah Hecker. She's a specialist in helping people through the miseries, the rigors of divorce. In a country where the divorce rate for first marriages is 41%, second marriages 60%, and third marriages a staggering 73%. Dr. Hecker, you must be a very, very busy lady.
I wish that wasn't the case in some ways, Alan, but unfortunately I am very busy. The statistics say it all.
In your practice, which is more difficult, to deal with people who are going through divorce or people who have already been divorced?
They're both difficult. People will get divorced. The legal aspect of divorce is something that they will slog through.
Yeah.
The emotional aspect of the divorce is something that is a bit more complicated and takes a bit more time. So I would say that the process of reinventing yourself after the legal divorce is completed takes more time.
I've read a number of your papers on divorce, and you separate church and state, so to speak. There's the legal divorce and then there's the emotional divorce. How are they different?
Traditionally, divorce has been thought of as a legal process. But the reality is that many of the problems that enter the attorney's office are personal problems and should not really be dealt with as statutes of law.
Is it your feeling, Dr. Hecker, that some or all or a good part of what is the problems that people deal with as they go through divorce, is it fermented by the attorneys? Are the attorneys responsible for causing the problem?
Well, I think the conventional divorce is certainly one of being an adversarial situation, which is, in answer to your question, is certainly going to provoke people to get into the war arena.
And you say conventional. Well, what's non-conventional? What's a non-conventional divorce?
Well, there are different types of divorce opportunities these days. There's what's called alternative dispute resolutions, of course, which mediation is one. And then there's a more contemporary type of divorce, which is called a collaborative divorce. And
what's the difference between mediated and collaborative?
A mediated situation is one that typically the attorneys play a pretty minimal role.
I see.
In a collaborative divorce, attorneys play a major role. But the difference between a collaborative divorce and a more traditional divorce is exactly the divorce.
Well, what are some of the benefits, and then what are some of the problems that you see or issues that you see in using the telephone as opposed to face-to-face contact?
One is the convenience. People don't want to leave their office. People
Right.
love the idea that they can, put a client on hold and pick up the phone and call me. Or, for example, they can be on the way home.
And I bet you get a lot less people not showing up for their appointed times and,
Well, in
and calling you and saying, I can't make it to my appointment,
Exactly.
Dr. Hecker.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The research shows, interestingly enough, that if someone is in an environment where they're comfortable, they're going to be less inhibited.
Ah.
So you might recall Sigmund Freud, for example, talked about lying on the couch, don't face the doctor.
Right.
Well, in a way, this kind of mirrors that effect.
All right. Let's come back to the question at hand, which is positives and negatives. So the positives are, one, you don't have to go anyplace. You can do it right from the comfort
Tremendous
of your home or your
convenience.
office. That's tremendous convenience. What else is there?
Another obvious advantage is for someone who is disabled. This affords them a terrific opportunity.
So those are the positives. What about the negatives? What are the negatives? Do you see any?
I don't really see any negatives, Alan. There are a few people in my practice, really only a handful of people, who have expressed an interest in working with me, who have been uncomfortable with the idea that they're not face-to-face with me. But that is really no more than a handful of
Well,
people.
I actually can see another positive. The other positive is that if your client is in Encino, California, Canton, Ohio, Shreveport, Louisiana, they can still be your patient. Where they couldn't be, yeah.
I have clients throughout the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
So it's anything goes.
Obviously, Dr. Hecker, you have impeccable credentials on the psychotherapeutic side. But what credentials do you have on the legal side? Because obviously you need to understand that as well, don't you?
I do. I have an interdisciplinary approach as well as interdisciplinary training. I am trained as a mediator, and I am trained in collaborative divorce as well. So I am able to understand and go back and forth somewhat between, although I'm not a lawyer,
Right.
I can go back and forth between the emotional issues and the legal issues and try to keep them separate where necessary.
Okay. The psychotherapeutic model, as I recall, is one which can go on for quite some time, meaning years and years. And what about this kind of counseling? Does this go on for as long a time, or is it generally more telescoped, condensed?
There are various options that I will offer my clients. There are some people who would be interested in, do I stay or do I leave? Okay, these are people who are going to have a more short-term kind of counseling process with me.
Right.
There are other people who...
So that's you're going to help them to make that decision.
It depends on the motive for their calling me up. They may be in different places in the divorce process. For example, they may be just unsure about whether or not to stay or leave. Okay, that then would be the immediate task at hand. Then there will be some people...
Do you tend to focus in on single issues, or are there multiple issues that you're usually focusing in on? Or is it usually just one issue that you're focusing in on?
The answer to that really, Alan, is it depends on the needs of the client. If they have a single need, then I can focus on that. More often than not, what they think is the major problem isn't necessarily what I think is, so that we may end up going into a little bit more of a complicated process than they had originally determined they wanted.
Spending this half of an hour with Dr. Deborah Hecker, she's a specialist in helping people go through the trauma, the rigors, the misery of divorce. And if you're going through that right now, be sure to stay tuned with us. We'll be right back.
Here's what people are saying about Dr. Hecker's divorce recovery program.
It became a path to self-realization. Still ongoing and sometimes difficult, but greatly rewarding.
You don't have to leave your home or office to take advantage of the divorce recovery program.
For me, use of the telephone is an extremely comfortable and effective way to resolve my conflicts.
Individual and group programs are available to you nationwide by phone.
I recommend her highly, and without reservation.
There is no need to suffer and prolong the agony of divorce recovery.
Dr. Hecker has turned my life around. She is the real deal.
Dr. Hecker's program is designed to help you through divorce recovery quickly and into a new, stable, and hopeful future.
Thank you for helping me heal and giving me the tools to move forward.
Call the number you see on the screen to arrange a free 50-minute consultation with Dr. Hecker. Or, if you prefer, visit Dr. Hecker's website, www.drdeborahhecker.com.
Welcome back in. We're talking with Dr. Deborah Hecker. She's a specialist in helping people through, as we've said, the rigors and misery of divorce in a country where the divorce rate for third marriages is 73%. My goodness, Dr. Hecker, that is a number to conjure with, isn't it?
Sad fact.
Sad fact.
Sad fact.
Do most of the people that you see, are they first-timers, second-timers, third-timers? What's the balance?
I would say most of them are first-timers.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
When somebody comes to you and they're considering divorce, they're not in the process of divorce, do you try to get them to reconcile? Is that the way that it works?
I will not have a vested interest in what they ultimately decide to do. What I will focus on with them are the nature of their conflicts so that they can really work through what is a major, major decision and fraught with ambivalence.
Why don't you give us, if you would, some examples of how people come to you and what they say to you when they come to you? What's typically the questions that they ask, and are they always angry?
No. The interesting thing, Alan, about divorce is that there are such a range of raw emotions that people are going to go through. Anywhere from tremendous sorrow, sadness, grief, to relief. And the same person can have all of these feelings, and they may be contradictory. Relief, despair, terror,
is it kind
regret.
Of like going through a divorce, is it kind of like the Kubler-Ross thing, where you go through those stages?
Anyone who goes through a divorce, who sustains a loss of any kind, whether or not it's divorce, death, loss of a job, when there's a loss, there is a period of letting go, which technically is called a grieving period.
Mm-hmm. So you help them go through the grieving period.
In order to successfully get to the other side of a divorce and to reinvest in life, one must go through some sort of a process, which is really what I am able to help them with.
I'm sure that everybody that comes to see you has a story to tell. And do most people believe that they're in the right, that's the other person, their spouse, who's wrong?
Almost invariably, there's what we call the dumper and the dumpy. Right there.
Okay.
Right
the
there.
Dumper and the dumpy.
The dumper and the dumpy. Right there, we're going to get a different viewpoint about what's happened. Okay, but everybody does have their particular defense of what has
Must you work
occurred.
through the anger before you can get to figuring it out for yourself? Do you have to get through the anger first?
Anger and sadness and all of the emotions that we just talked about are an inevitable part of the divorce. What I try to do, Alan, this is an important part of the way I like to work, is I try to help people to acknowledge those feelings, to express them, but to be very careful about how they impact the actual legal process. So we have really two simultaneous processes going on here. One's the legal divorce, as I may have mentioned earlier. One is the emotional divorce. The legal divorce might best be thought of as a business dissolution.
Ah,
Okay? So that I am there supporting all the emotions that people are going to feel, and I'm going to validate those emotions. But what we want to be very, very careful about is that the emotions do not cloud what would be a good business dissolution.
I see. Okay. And do the attorneys like what you do, or are they guarded about what you do, or do they feel hostile towards you for what you're doing?
Well, that's an interesting point, because just picking up on the word anger, for example, they might be interested in provoking and having their client provoke the other person, whereas I'm interested in helping my client to experience their anger, to validate it, to know that it's real, but that...
To get beyond it.
To be able to not have that impact what would be a fair, reasonable divorce.
How do people find you?
I may get a referral through an attorney. I have a website that produces a lot of...
You have it right at the bottom of the screen. People can see it.
Okay, so I have the website, which is it's a way that...
The telephone number as well is there.
The way that I market. Or I might get a referral from an already existing or previous client.
Mm-hmm. And what are the questions that they ask? Somebody calls you up. Typically, what are they interested in talking to you about?
I think the foremost issue is, how on earth do I get beyond this?
I see.
They're just so overwhelmed. Again, it depends on who's the dumper, who's the dumpy, but I think it's hard for them when they're in the midst of trauma and crisis to imagine that there is life after divorce, which there is.
And what about the dumper-dumpy? Who's likely to feel that they have the upper hand?
Well, I think initially the answer to that is obvious. The person who has done the dumping, they have thought this through. They have gone through the letting go process prior to the dumpy. Remember, the dumpy is just found out.
Just found out. Right.
They may be blindsided. So that person initially may have what we would call, in your words, an upper hand. However, as the process neutralizes and both parties accept the inevitable divorce, any number of things can happen with the so-called dumpy.
Yeah.
The dumpy, with the help of the counseling process, as well as their attorney or mediator, will begin to reinforce their needs and their rights, so that there will begin to be a greater level playing field.
I've been to your website, and I took a look, and it says that you offer a 50-minute complimentary consultation. What goes on in that consultation, and how many people are interested in that consultation?
I get a lot of calls, Alan, people interested in what is this all about. One of the real important aspects of this is, since I do the counseling by phone, it's very important to me that people get to know me, get to know how I work, what I sound like. People who have looked at my website are much more aware of who I am, but that initial consultation has I have various goals for that. One is get to know me. Two is I'm interested in knowing what is keeping you up at night? Well, how can I help you? What is the most pressing issue that you think you need help with?
How did you get into this?
I've always had an interest in attachment and separation, starting with the mother-child relationship. So that's always been a passion of mine. Psychology these days is very much like medicine in the sense that developing a niche, a specialization is important. People who are looking for help don't just say, oh, I need a psychotherapist. They're going to say, I need someone who specializes in helping me deal with my children. Okay, so of course we know divorce, as you mentioned, the statistics are nearly 1 in 2 people who get divorced, and so people will go immediately to divorce. I took my interest in attachment and loss and I integrated it with a very personal experience that I had. I went through an extremely painful divorce many years ago and realized at the time that I didn't really get the emotional input that I needed. I got the legal input.
Well, in talking to you off camera, I've asked you this question in prep for the program. You told me that there wasn't any place for you to go, which is what's kind of spurred your interest in this.
There were traditional psychotherapists, more generalized people who would, they certainly were capable of talking about divorce. I think it's very important to know about the loss, grief, specifically.
And is there a more acute aspect to this that kind of trails off? It's less chronic than typical psychotherapy, takes 2, 3, 5, 10, 15 years. Is this more of an immediate nature and can be handled in the immediate future, so to speak?
Yes, I'm going to focus, in response to that, I'm going to focus on 2 primary things. One is the actual emotional aftermath. People need to experience and express their feelings.
Right.
Okay? Then what also needs to happen is they need to begin to separate themselves out from the union of partnership. Okay? They're no longer a we, they're an I.
Right.
And so that is another aspect of the process.
Dr. Hecker, we need to pause here for just a moment. When we come back, I'll be asking Dr. Hecker about the effect on families, on children, on extended families. That must be very big, because there's more than 2 people involved in a divorce, isn't there?
Oh, the fragmentation of the family is tremendous.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Here's what people are saying about Dr. Hecker's divorce recovery program.
It became a path to self-realization. Still ongoing and sometimes difficult, but greatly rewarding.
You don't have to leave your home or office to take advantage of the divorce recovery program.
For me, use of the telephone is an extremely comfortable and effective way to resolve my conflicts.
Individual and group programs are available to you nationwide by phone.
I recommend her highly, and without reservation.
There is no need to suffer and prolong the agony of divorce recovery.
Dr. Hecker has turned my life around. She is the real deal.
Dr. Hecker's program is designed to help you through divorce recovery quickly and into a new, stable, and hopeful future.
Thank you for helping me heal and giving me the tools to move forward.
Call the number you see on the screen to arrange a free 50-minute consultation with Dr. Hecker. Or, if you prefer, visit Dr. Hecker's website, www.drdeborahhecker.com.
You're going to come out the other side, and you're going to be a new person.
I am a person who looks at the glass as half full. And I believe that divorce can be a stepping stone to growth, change, even transformation.
So from the point 2 people have decided to go their own ways, how long will it be before I start to feel like myself again, or basically feel good again?
The process of developing what we'll call a new identity, a sense of separateness, the I that I made reference to before, as opposed to being part of the we. Right. The research in my experience has shown that it can take several years. It is, however, important to recognize that it is a process, and by definition, it's not something that happens overnight, but it's gradual, and one can begin to experience the benefits pretty soon. Pretty soon.
So then, Dr. Hecker, what percentage of the people who are in the divorce arena can be helped by what you do?
100%.
100%?
100%. Their receptivity to some of the things that I might say can vary depending on their openness to a less adversarial divorce.
As we did our research in preparation for this program, we found out that you have a very kind of a different style and approach to therapy when you do it with your patients. You're not somebody who sits there and just listens and scratches on a pad. You take an active part in the conversation. Do people like that?
People love that, Alan. I play a very active role in the counseling process, not just in terms of answering their questions, but also guiding them and helping them to understand what the process is all about. What I find is that by playing a more active and a less passive role, the process can be facilitated.
Yeah. So what would be your advice if somebody is thinking about getting divorced? Thinking, not doing it yet, but thinking about getting divorced. What should be the process that they would go through in order to come to a decision, either yes or no? Can you help them with that?
Yes, and basically what I will help them to do is look at all sides of their conflict. I don't know that there's anybody who goes through a divorce, even those individuals and couples who basically agree, you know, the most ideal of situations where we're not working out here, where there's not some degree of ambivalence. And so I think, and even towards the end there may be ambivalence, but the initial work that I can do with someone is to help them to look at all aspects of that conflict so that the scales are going to tip in one direction or another.
Okay. And what about people who have already been through divorce and now are in the next stage, which is trying to become themselves again, live a new life as a single person, as you put it?
I'm going to call that the reorganization stage. This is the time where the reality of the divorce has set in. They're not thinking about their spouse every day. And they're basically, their energy levels return, they're functioning well. It's not that they don't still feel the loss, but the intense sorrow is not there. And they are really in a place where they begin to think about the I.
Staying together for the children, I'll bet you hear that all the time, don't you? Yeah. Is that one of the most common reasons that people stay together in a bad marriage?
It's certainly something that people convince themselves may be a rationale for staying together. However, I would sum it up this way, Alan, a good divorce far outweighs a bad marriage. For the sake of the children, if the couple cannot create a stability, a sense of security for the child, then they should go their separate ways, and that's something that they can learn to do as no longer married couple.
Here's what people are saying about Dr. Hecker's divorce recovery program.
It became a path to self-realization. Still ongoing and sometimes difficult, but greatly rewarding.
You don't have to leave your home or office to take advantage of the divorce recovery program.
For me, use of the telephone is an extremely comfortable and effective way to resolve my conflicts.
Individual and group programs are available to you nationwide by phone.
I recommend her highly, and without reservation.
There is no need to suffer and prolong the agony of divorce recovery.
Dr. Hecker has turned my life around. She is the real deal.
Dr. Hecker's program is designed to help you through divorce recovery quickly and into a new, stable, and hopeful future.
Thank you for helping me heal and giving me the tools to move forward.
Call the number you see on the screen to arrange a free 50-minute consultation with Dr. Hecker. Or, if you prefer, visit Dr. Hecker's website, www.drdeborahhecker.com.
Is there a typical time frame before people working with you start to make progress, feel better, are able to go it on their own, so to speak?
First, I would say that I think people will start to feel better almost immediately, regardless of whether or not
So there's an immediate feeling of relief.
Yes. And as I mentioned, educating them to the process, I think, also contributes to a feeling of, this is manageable, I can do this. If people come to me to decide whether or not they should stay in the marriage or leave the marriage, that typically can take anywhere from 3 to 5 sessions.
Not very long.
No. I mean, I can help people at the very least to conceptualize what the issues are for them.
Do people have difficulty, Dr. Hecker, seeing the real issues? Do they have difficulty seeing the real issues? Do you help them to uncover the real issues?
I think that people tend to look at their relationships in a somewhat simplistic way. And one of the things that I do that I think is very important for the sort of rehab process, if you will, is for them to understand what really happened there, what went wrong,
Why did it blow up?
Why did it blow up, and not only what did their partner do to them, but what did they contribute to the demise of the marriage.
So somebody who is going to make a decision to stay in a marriage and not stay in the marriage, typically somewhere between 3 and 5 sessions with you to come to some sort of conclusion.
Yes.
Just like having a cut, different people heal at different speeds, right? Mm-hmm. Is it the same thing with this, that people heal in different ways and at different speeds?
It's a good analogy, Alan. People are going to heal and deal with loss in different ways. And there are several factors that are going to contribute to their facility, if you will, in getting through the process of loss. One has to do with how much experience they've had in the past with loss. Have they developed...
Excuse me, Dr. Hecker, having previous trauma, is that a help or a hindrance in getting through this?
It could work either way.
Okay.
It could work either way. If someone has sustained losses in the past, if they have learned to manage those losses well, then that is probably going to be advantageous in terms of the process of healing.
What are the most frequently asked questions that people pose to you as they call you for your services?
I would say the number one question is, am I ever going to get over this? Is there life on the other side?
Is there life on the other side?
Yeah.
Am I ever going to be me again? Does insurance cover any of these costs?
For some people it does.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's a considerable saving of money on both sides of the warring factions, so to speak, by going through this process?
There's no question that for an individual or a couple who engages in a counseling process, they can avoid doubling or tripling their fees if they are going exclusively with an attorney.
And will you counsel two people at once, meaning a husband and wife?
Sure, if that's what's needed.
Okay.
In addition to the cost benefits, the process can become less adversarial.
Yep.
The couple can agree more readily on custody and visitation issues. Mm-hmm. The post-divorce relationship between the divorcing couple can be enhanced, which of course then creates less trauma for the child.
Dr. Hecker, I'm sorry to say that this half hour has flown by, and we got to ask you a lot of questions, but not all of the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking about getting a divorce, you're in the process of divorce, if you look at the bottom of the screen there, Dr. Hecker has allowed us to put her website and a telephone number that you can call. And you can see, actually, if you've missed any part of this program, you can see this program on her website in its entirety. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you again the next time.